Welcome to Scott Fox After 9. Brand new week, ready to go. And I want to, before I get too far into this one, take a second just to say thank you to everybody who followed up on my listener DM special on Friday. If you didn't hear that, every Friday I answer your DMs. It could be questions, comments, you can call me out, you can correct me, you can agree with me, you can ask a question, whatever you want. Every Friday, the podcast is turned over to you. This week, there was a real interesting range of questions on a whole bunch of different topics, and I want to thank everybody who reached out after hearing that episode, particularly where I talked about death. That one, for some reason, struck a real chord with people, and I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. Most of the comments good, some of them not, but that's okay. We can disagree on what the afterlife might look like. I don't know for sure. I'm not an expert, and I'm going to go out on a limb here and guess that neither are you. So either way, it was some good discussion, and I want to say thank you very much to everybody who reached out. This episode today is probably not even going to be an overly long one. It's mainly just a primer for all of the different things that are going to be happening over the next couple of days. And if you think about it, this is a busy week. Number one, you've got Prime Minister Carney traveling to Washington tomorrow to meet with President Trump at the White House. It's amazing because we were told July 21st, and then it was the end of July, and several deadlines have been missed here where the Prime Minister had said he was going to get a deal to get Canada out of the situation it's in with America. So far, no deal, but when you hear that the Prime Minister is actually going to Washington, he's going to meet with the President, no doubt they'll talk to the media afterwards, it kind of makes you think, well, maybe they're closer than we think. Maybe there is a deal coming. But everybody on the news, you know, all those talking heads, the pundits, I think they call them, those people are really downplaying this, saying, don't expect much from this one. Well, we're probably not going to have anything solved on this one. And I'm thinking, well, then why are we going? Why are we sending all those people down to Washington? It's not just the Prime Minister going, it's his staff and his security, and we've got to fly down his SUV detail and all of the other things that go into this, not the least of which is taking the media along. And by the way, the media loves those junkets. They get treated like royalty, flying around with the Prime Minister. They stay in nice hotels in great locations, and they get great access to places like the White House. So no doubt everybody's excited about this trip, but it seems like they're already downplaying the possibility that we might have a deal. And I'm not exactly sure why. When it comes to that story, let me read you the story as it's written today by the Canadian Press. Prime Minister Mark Carney is heading to Washington today, Monday, as Canada seeks a trade deal with the United States. Carney will be meeting with President Donald Trump during the visit as U.S. tariffs are still hitting the Canadian steel, aluminum, copper, autos, and softwood lumber sectors. But the bulk of Canadian goods continue to enter the United States tariff-free thanks to an exemption under the Canada-US-Mexico trade agreement. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says Carney has his support and that all parties must put the country ahead of politics in pursuit of a deal. So we've got the framework laid out here. It seems like we're all swimming in the same direction. Pierre Poilievre is cheering on Mark Carney. And I think that's the right attitude. I know there's some folks out there who don't like the Prime Minister, but at the end of the day, if he's the one who's got to try and get a deal done, then we want him to do well because we want Canada to do well. So I hope that people don't get too down on it, which also kind of makes me wonder again, why are all these talking heads on television downplaying this so much? Is it so that it looks like an even bigger surprise when we do get a deal tomorrow? Or is there really not going to be a deal and this is just kind of a waste of everyone's time? Then again, maybe it's not a waste of time. Maybe just meeting is the latest step. Although many other countries have gotten deals now with America with far fewer meetings and phone calls than we've already had. So I'll leave it at that. Tomorrow is the day that the Prime Minister is going to be in Washington. No doubt this is going to dominate the news cycle for the next 24 to 48 hours. And here's hoping something positive gets done. I am going to play a little bit of President Trump in this episode, but more to do with the government shutdown. I'm also going to play a little bit of audio on this episode from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Now today, Doug is in Quebec. Let me tell you why. There's a leadership summit of some of the Canadian premiers and U.S. governors. Today, it's actually wrapping up. Quebec Premier François Legault has been hosting Premier Doug Ford, as well as the governors of New York, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. and delegations from Ohio, Illinois, and Minnesota. They say the talks have focused on the economy, defense, critical minerals, and tariffs. It's a biannual meeting, but it's their first since Donald Trump returned to the White House in January. Here's my question. If we've got all of these people together anyway, and we've already agreed that these are the stakeholders that have to agree, why isn't the time change on their agenda? When I heard that they were doing this meeting, I thought, okay, great. We're finally going to make some progress. For those who don't remember, we have a law on the books here in Ontario. It's already been passed that we are going to get away from daylight savings time. No more spring forward and fall back. We're just going to stay on the same time all year round, and the sun will come up when the sun comes up. We don't have to try and change our time and adjust our whole schedule based on that. But the thing is, our law won't kick in until our neighboring states and provinces agree to change their time. It kind of needs to be that way. Imagine if it was 10 a.m. in Niagara Falls, Canada, but it was 11 a.m. in Niagara Falls, USA. The same could be said for Windsor and Detroit and all of the other different places where we're right on a border. Imagine if Ottawa was 10 a.m., but over in Gatineau, it was 11 a.m. We have to have everybody on the same page. And I thought with all of these governors and premiers together, this would be a good opportunity to try and get something done that I think most people would probably like to see done. But it doesn't appear to be on the agenda. I'm hoping one of the reporters there is going to ask a question of Premier Ford and try and figure out if that's something that we're still working towards or if we've just given up and we're just going to leave things the way they are and never change again. Good luck to all of them. Here's hoping they make a little progress because, hey, premiers, governors, they can all have a little bit of impact on relieving the cost of living for all of us. Tariffs aside, there's still lots more that can be done. So that's happening today. No doubt you'll hear about that at some point today as well. But I think by and large, pretty well across Canada and in parts of New York, there's really one thing that's on everybody's mind.
Deep left field. It is a grand slam.
How about them Blue Jays, huh? The Jays, an absolute dominant win over the Yankees yesterday. Well, the first 7 innings were anyway. The Yankees did kind of come back, but either way, a win is a win, and Toronto is now 1 win away from going to the American League Championship Series. 1 win away. There's 3 more games that could be played. 2 of them would be at Yankee Stadium, 1 of them at Rogers Center later this week. The Jays only need to win 1 out of the next 3, and they are through to the American League Championship Series. I got to be honest with you. I'd basically given up on baseball. It's been a long time since I was this excited about watching a ball game. But it's not just me. I can tell it's not just me. Everybody I know seems to be into this. I was flipping through social media yesterday in between innings, and it's amazing how many people were screenshotting stuff and reposting stuff and just talking about what they were doing to watch the game, where they were, what the vibe was like. It's a good time of year when we're playing October baseball in Toronto, and the Jays are doing as well as they are. You got to give it to that rookie pitcher from the Jays yesterday, Trey Savage. It's funny, I had to look it up. I thought, Savage, that's an interesting name. I wonder what his origin is, where his family is from. Savage, where would that be? Is that like Eastern Europe? Is it South America? Savage, where is that? Pottstown, Pennsylvania, to be exact. I don't know why I assumed anything different, but at 22 years old, that kid had the Yankees completely twisted in circles yesterday. He was phenomenal on the mound, and it looks like we're going to get to see him as the playoffs go on. Maybe even that Game 5. That might even go to him if this series goes that far. Go Jays. Game 3 is tomorrow at Yankee Stadium in New York. The other thing, of course, is football. I don't talk a whole lot of sports here on the podcast because, I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, and I'm intimately aware of the reputation that Bills fans have amongst fans of other teams. We're not necessarily your favorite fan base, and the Bills doing very, very well until last night. People ask me from time to time on listener DMs what I think of the NFL. I'd made a comment like years ago that I think football is fixed. And that makes sense to me. We're talking about a multi-billion-dollar industry. What are the odds that they're actually just leaving it to fate to determine who's going to be the Super Bowl champion? With those ratings on the line and all of the other things that go into it, what are the odds that this is truly just about the best teams on the field? Well, I mean, there was a big storyline leading into this week that the Philadelphia Eagles and the Buffalo Bills are the only two remaining undefeated teams. Which week will they lose in? And then they both lost this weekend, and both against teams that they probably should have beat. Philadelphia loses to the Denver Broncos, and the Bills lost to the New England Patriots. Is that legit? Because that really doesn't seem legit. Even if one of them happened, it would be a fluke. For both of those to happen, that seems like something maybe a little more serious here. Maybe something that requires a little more investigation. But I'm going to leave it at that. I have absolutely no proof that that football is fixed, but I'm certainly looking for excuses to cover up for the fact that the Bills lost to New England yesterday. Frustrating stuff. Okay, I think I've covered all the preamble. I hope you had a great weekend. We are heading toward the Thanksgiving long weekend, and all this week on After 9 is going to be a lot of fun, so I hope you can check back in for episodes all this week. They come out daily. Now let's get to something that's on my mind, and it's not the first time it's come up. Ontario Premier Doug Ford was doing a rally with some union folk over the weekend, and one of the things that came up was the Crown Royal Company and Diageo brands. Diageo, for those who don't recall, has announced they're closing one of their bottling plants in southwestern Ontario, right down near Detroit. It's just south of Windsor. They've got a bottling plant there, and it's going to be closing. But they're not moving to America. They're actually going to be moving their bottling to, I believe it's Quebec. It's still a Canadian drink, and it's still going to be bottled in Canada, but yeah, they're closing an Ontario factory. Well, Premier Ford, last time this came up, poured out that whole bottle of Crown Royal. You probably remember the news conference, and if you want to relive that magic again, feel free to go back and listen to that episode of After 9, because it was a fun one. Well, it came up again over the weekend. Premier Ford out at this rally for, I believe it was Unifor workers, and this, Doug, this is what the Premier had to say.
As sure as I'm standing here, a message to all the bigwigs at Diageo, I swear to God, those bottles of Crown Royal are coming off the LCBO shelves. When the last person walks out through that door, we're going to make sure LCBO takes off their brands because we need to stick together.
Wow. Where do we start here? I mean, that sounded unhinged, didn't it? That audio courtesy of Siobhan Morris from CTV. I don't know if any other sources have it, so I use that one. Thank you, Siobhan. I really don't understand where the Premier is coming from on this one, because there are a lot of companies that are laying off a lot of people. There are facilities that are closing down, and I don't hear a lot from the Premier on any of those. I also haven't heard the Premier stand up and complain too much about the fact that the government itself is letting go of a lot of employees. But for whatever reason, he seems very triggered by the fact that Diageo is closing down a bottling plant in southwestern Ontario. It's a significant number of employees. It's over 200 as I understand it. But I mean, lots of other companies have laid off a lot more people. And I didn't hear anything from the Premier on that. But he does seem very interested in the alcohol, doesn't he? People point that out to me all the time, and I usually rebut that with, actually, as far as I know, the Premier doesn't even drink. I'm told that that's true. He doesn't drink alcohol. However, he does seem very interested in the business of it. There's been no shortage of changes over the years since Doug Ford took over as Premier of Ontario. Some of those include moving beer and wine sales into grocery stores and convenience stores, things like that. The beer store, as a consequence of opening up alcohol and making it available in more places, the beer store is letting go of a lot of people. And I haven't heard any backlash really from the Premier on that either. But for whatever reason, this particular bottling plant in southwestern Ontario that's not going to America, it's staying in Canada, just not in Ontario. This one seems to have the Premier quite angry. Let me listen to that one more time. Premier Ford on the weekend.
As sure as I'm standing here, a a message to all the bigwigs at Diageo. I swear to God, those bottles of Crown Royal are coming off the LCBO shelves. When the last person walks out through that door, we're going to make sure LCBO takes off their brands because we need to stick together.
So he's going to take all the Crown Royal, a Canadian beverage, out of the LCBO stores, and frankly, I don't understand why. It doesn't really make sense to me, especially when you consider this is a response, apparently, to the economic climate that we find ourselves in. See, Premier Ford does not like President Trump and his tariffs, and President Trump certainly would appreciate if any companies relocated from Ontario down to America. That's definitely one of President Trump's goals. Premier Ford doesn't want that to happen, but that's not what's happening in this particular case. I mean, companies make decisions like this all the time for efficiencies, and it sucks, especially for the workers who thought they had a great job working for a good company and they had a good future there. Well, I mean, things change, and I don't think anybody is looking around thinking the economy is cooking right now, so I kind of get where they're coming from, as unfortunate as it is. Diageo also has a lot of other brands, and are we going to pull all of them off the shelves, or is it just Crown Royal? And I know that we've taken the Jack Daniels and the American alcohol out of the LCBO. You can feel however you want to feel about that. I personally disagree with that decision. In fact, I don't understand why one guy can decide what the rest of the province can drink. And in Ontario, we have a monopoly where the government controls what goes into the LCBO and they control what we can buy at the LCBO. That's why they've got so much control over us and this liquor industry here in Ontario. And I personally disagree with that as well. I think that the way we should go in Ontario is to completely privatize the LCBO. You see, I maintain that the government should not be able to be the ones who make the rules and then the only ones allowed to operate in that space. I thought we learned a lot from allowing beer and wine sales in private stores, like grocery stores and convenience stores. I thought the model for cannabis stores was a great example for how the LCBO could work, and that is the model that's being used in many other places in Canada where individuals are allowed to open up a store and sell alcohol. Now, they have to follow the rules, of course, but they're allowed to sell it. In Ontario, that is simply not the case. The government has a full monopoly on spirit sales in this province. And for one guy to be able to decide, I don't like Donald Trump, and I'm going to say you can't buy any American liquor anywhere in this province, I think that that's a mistake. I think that we should let consumers decide. And frankly, since we don't all agree on that as a response to tariffs anyway, I think the government should stay out of it. That's just my thought on it. And I really wish that Doug Ford would back off and just let the LCBO sell what is going to be most profitable for the LCBO. I'd like to see a lot more choice and a lot more variety. I say it all the time. If you go into a liquor store in America, if you go into a liquor store in other parts of Canada, you'll probably be shocked at the amount of products on the shelves that we do not have access to here in Ontario because the LCBO is the only game in town. And if they don't get the deal they want, if they don't like somebody that they're dealing with, for whatever reason, they can decide we will carry it or we won't carry it. And now they're going to pull Crown Royal off the shelves. What other products are going to come off, though? We're in a trade war with China right now. I know you don't hear about it on the news, but we are very much in a trade war with China. While the Prime Minister often talks about how great a deal we've got with America, we have a terrible deal with the Chinese right now. And yet Chinese alcohol is still available at the LCBO, whereas the American alcohol is not. Is anybody going to ask Premier Ford about that? Or would the Premier maybe like to come on the pod and answer some questions about this? I know he's not going to. He's not going to walk into this environment and talk to me about why he makes these decisions. And that's fine. That's up to him. It just leaves everybody else wondering what his motivation is. Why the contradiction? Why is Chinese alcohol still available, but American alcohol is not? Why would we rip Crown Royal specifically off the shelves when they're still a Canadian company? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, everybody. I really don't get where the premier is coming from. And that clip was hard to listen to. I mean, he was ranting and raving. Maybe that played well to the big union crowd that he was talking to. But when you look back at it on the cameras and see it on social media, it comes off unhinged. But either way, I'm counting on Doug to get rid of those speed enforcement cameras, one thing at a time, and then we'll circle back on the alcohol. Let's move on to something else. The President of the United States is someone who we're going to be hearing a lot about here in Canada over the next 24 to 48 hours because he'll be hosting Prime Minister Carney down in Ottawa. The President had a number of different media availabilities this weekend, going onto planes, coming off of planes. He landed on an aircraft carrier at one point, I believe. Let's hear a little bit from President Trump over the weekend.
Well, I call them Democrat layoffs. They're Democrat layoffs. They're causing it. We're ready to go back. You know, we have a record-setting economy. We have a record-setting country. Prices are way down. We're doing better than the country's ever done. And the Democrats hate seeing that. It's up to them. Anybody laid off, that's because of the Democrats.
I mean, I understand what the president is saying. The U.S. government is shut down and there's going to have to be layoffs. With no money coming into the country, they certainly can't afford to pay a massive civil service. So there may have to be layoffs. But the president's not talking about just laying people off while the government is shut down and then bringing them all back when the government reopens. I think he's talking about like permanent layoffs. I think he's looking at this government shutdown as an opportunity to get rid of people that he really does not want on the payroll. People that, well, I mean, he did specifically target Democrats there, and he's saying this is the Democrats' fault. That really depends on who you talk to. Many Democrats would argue that President Trump is forcing their hand and he's trying to roll back Obama-era Obamacare protections and concessions. And frankly, I personally don't see it that way. To me, it seems like exactly what the U.S. government officials have said. The Democrats want to keep offering Medicare services to people that aren't supposed to be in the country. And then there's a lot of other things that are in what they want to be this budget extension bill or the bill to raise the debt ceiling that really have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations of the U.S. government. In fact, over the weekend, U.S. Senator Kennedy was talking about some of the things that the Democrats want in order to pass the bill, which would reopen the government. This is about a minute long, and I think it's very interesting. Listen to this.
We found $3.6 million for pastry cooking classes and dance focus groups for male prostitutes in Haiti. I kid you not. I'm not making this up. It was in the budget under President Biden. We took it out. Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez in the socialist wing, the loon wing of the Democratic Party, says we're going to shut down government until you put it back in. $4.2 million. We took it out. The Congresswoman and the socialist wing of their party says we've got to put that back in for the open government. $4.2 million for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex people in the Western Balkans and Uganda. I could spend the rest of the afternoon here. We took all that out. It upset Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. It upset the socialist wing of her party. And now that wing of her party and the Congresswoman.
What is that? You know, when Doge was doing their thing, when Elon Musk was working very closely with the U.S. administration, he found a ton of things, just like Senator Kennedy was talking about, and had them taken out. He said this is not the best use of the taxpayer money. Well, now, in order to reopen the government, they need some support from the Democrats. The Democrats seem to be really beholden to the very left-leaning side of their party, and they really want millions and millions and millions of dollars in funding to fund stuff just like Senator Kennedy was just talking about. You know, if you ask the average person, just a regular run-of-the-mill person on the street, how do you feel about how our tax dollars are spent? A lot of people are going to use examples just like that of how government is wasting our money. Trump doesn't want to bow down and say, okay, fine, we'll fund the cooking classes for the prostitutes in Haiti, and we'll fund the this and that. And I don't think Trump is going to go for it. And if it really is a line in the sand that all of that socialist spending has to be in there or the government won't reopen, I think the government is going to be closed for a very long time. Just before the weekend, the White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, also talked a little bit about this government shutdown.
Why are layoffs now necessary in this shutdown?
Because we have an administration and we have a president who are wholeheartedly focused on restoring fiscal sanity to our government and doing the right thing by the American taxpayer. We are $37 trillion in debt, and the federal government is currently shut down. There is no more money coming into the federal government's coffers. And as you've also seen since the beginning, in January, this administration is focusing on waste, fraud, and abuse. And so Democrats have given this administration an unenviable choice to have to take a look at the balance sheet and identify where these cuts and layoffs can be made.
Why can't we all agree on that? I mean, I know this is an American thing, but there are Canadian implications as well. Why can't we all agree that the government needs to live within its means? If it brings in $1 billion a year in tax revenue, and it's a lot more than that, but we'll use round numbers. If the government brings in $1 billion in revenue, their spending can't go over $1 billion. If it does go over $1 billion, then we have to raise taxes or forget that spending altogether. Printing more money really shouldn't be an option because we've all just lived through the consequences of printing money. That's inflation, which not only raised the cost of living on so many people, it also made the central bank raise interest rates, which then increased the cost of living even more. Why can't we just have a government that lives within its means? If it costs $2 billion to operate the government, then taxes should reflect that. And if taxes get too high, well, we all know taxpayers are not going to tolerate that. It's a cowardly thing by the government to just keep borrowing money as opposed to confronting their own spending addiction. And it's happening in Canada. It's happening in the U.S. It's happening in places around the world. I kind of like that there's a government willing to stand up and say, no, we have to live within our means and we are not going to be spending any more money on silly stuff that doesn't benefit directly the American people. I think all of us who send our money to Ottawa every couple of weeks or how often you get paid, we'd like to know that when it goes there, that money is being spent responsibly. Right now, I don't know that too many people get the impression that their money is being spent responsibly. It doesn't seem like it anyway, not when you hear stuff like that, and that the Democrats in America are willing to keep the government shut down until some of those projects get put back in, the ones that Senator Kennedy talked about. Here's another one with President Trump talking about the government shutdown.
There was an OMB memo going around suggesting that there might be firings during the shutdown. Do you think that will happen if the shutdown goes for a little bit of time, sir?
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault. And it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could say, a lot of people are saying Trump wanted this, that I wanted this closing, and I didn't want it. But a lot of people are saying it because I'm allowed to cut things that should have never been approved in the first place. And I will probably do that.
Well, I think we got the answer right there. I mean, it doesn't seem like Trump is all that unhappy that the government is shut down. It is shut down, and he's doing that on a principled stance, but he's also exploiting this issue to get rid of a lot of people that he doesn't like and to cancel a lot of projects that, well, maybe he didn't have a good reason to cancel them, but now he can use the government shutdown as an excuse to doing it. It's almost like the Democrats have fallen into a trap that he said. One more from President Trump, then I'm going to move on.
It's politics, and they're doing things and asking for things that you wouldn't want, and most people that are sane wouldn't want, and patriots wouldn't want. They want illegal aliens to get taken care of with health care. And it's not, look, I have a bigger heart than they do, but it's not even that. Everybody in the world is going to enter our country and say, give us free health care, give us this, give us that. It's going to ruin all of the things that we have, all of the plans that we have. Obamacare was never any good, but it subsists. It's there. And everything will be destroyed because no country has enough money to take care of that. So they want the illegals. They refuse to get away with open borders. They want to do open borders. If they ever got in, they'll open up the borders. We have closed borders now. You only come into our country legally. But they would open up the borders in 2 minutes, and you understand it better than anybody because you've covered it so well for so long. Even though you're a young guy, you've covered it very well. They want transgender for everybody. They want men and women's sports. They haven't learned what happened in the last election. I think they forgot. And it's pretty amazing, actually. But in terms of the dollars or the money that we're talking about, they want us to take care of illegals. They want us to take care of people that can absolutely get a job. They're healthy and strong as you can be and young. And this is not what this was all about.
He makes less and less sense as interviews go on sometimes. I think I get what he was talking about, though. I think I understand the crux of what he meant. President Trump was simply saying, if the Democrats get back in, they're going to open up the borders again. He has spent a lot of time trying to close those borders, and they want to reopen them, and they want to give all of the benefits they can to those people that are coming to America that shouldn't be there. Do you need proof of that? Look around Canada. Because the exact same thing is happening here. And President Trump knows what's happening here. It was happening in America. He doesn't want that to happen again. But is he being honest with people about this government shutdown and what his real intentions are in letting it drag out? Seems like he wants to cancel a lot of projects. He wants to fire a lot of people. He says that's necessary, and he says this shutdown is exactly the justification that he needed to do it. Tomorrow is an important anniversary. Tomorrow is the 2-year anniversary of when Hamas militants attacked Israel viciously and gruesomely, and they took hostages, which are still being held in Gaza. Well, we are apparently making very, very good progress on bringing an end to this war, and I think that's what everybody wants. It's been enough time. It's time to stop the fighting. It is time to move on to whatever the next phase is. We need a ceasefire. We need humanitarian aid to get into Gaza so that the people are well taken care of and so that we can make sure that the aid actually gets to the people who need it. And it's just time. It's been 2 years. We can say, for the most part, mission accomplished. If Hamas releases the hostages, that's good, right? We can call it a day. There can be a ceasefire, and we can start moving toward a lasting peace. Whatever that's going to look like, likely a 2-state solution, we need to start moving on to whatever the next phase is. President Trump has been very involved in the peace negotiations between Israel and Gaza. He did an address from the Oval Office, and it's not very often that a president does this, where he sits down at the Resolute desk and addresses the American people with that backdrop behind him of the Oval Office. This is about a minute long. President Trump talking about the progress in making a ceasefire.
I want to thank the countries that helped me put this together. Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, and so many others. So many people fought so hard. This is a big day. We'll see how it all turns out. We have to get the final word down in concrete. Very importantly, I look forward to having the hostages come home to their parents and having some of the hostages, unfortunately, you know the condition they're in, come home likewise to their parents, because their parents wanted them just as much as though that young man or young woman were alive. So I just want to let you know that this is a very special day, maybe unprecedented in many ways. It is unprecedented, but thank you all, and thank you all to those great countries that helped. We were given a tremendous amount of help. Everybody was unified in wanting this war to end and seeing peace in the Middle East. And we're very close to achieving that. Thank you all, and everybody will be treated fairly.
I don't know why you didn't use a teleprompter. I don't know why you didn't write a speech. That seems like an important one. You would think that he would probably have something prepared, but no, he decided to ad-lib it. He decided to wing it, and that was how it turned out. Could have been a lot more effective, but either way, seems like America is leading the way on creating peace between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, and I just want the fighting to stop. It's been enough time. Tomorrow's the 2-year anniversary of October the 7th. As long as the hostages get released, I think we can find a path to peace. And I think that's what everybody, no matter which side you happen to lean with, whether you're pro-Israel or pro-Palestine, I think everybody agrees it's time for the fighting to stop. And again, in the same way that I said earlier, whether you like Mark Carney or not, you've got to be cheering on Mark Carney when he goes down to Washington tomorrow to get a good deal for Canada. Well, I'll say the same thing about Trump. Whether you like Trump or not, you've got to be cheering for him to be successful here because we all want peace. One more thing. I know I keep saying one more thing. Sorry, guys. I also didn't think this episode was going to go this long. I had more audio to play for you than I thought. Howard Lutnick is the U.S. Treasury Secretary. He is the guy who is in charge of tariffs. And he sat down to do an interview just the other day. And one interesting topic came up, something I want to flag for you, because this is something that a lot of people come to this podcast for information on. What's going on with the damn Epstein files? How much longer until we get to see who did what, until we see a little justice? Howard Lutnick used to be the next door neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein in New York. They're both very, very, very wealthy individuals. Lutnick bought the house right next to Epstein. And an interviewer, I'm sorry, but I don't know her name. This was on, I think it was the National Post that did this interview with him, asked him about living next to Epstein and whether or not he'd had any encounters. This clip is going to go on for about 2 minutes, but wow, is this ever an interesting glimpse into the psyche of Jeffrey Epstein. This is Howard Lutnick. Listen to this.
Jeffrey Epstein was your neighbour. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about him. East 71st Street. He was your neighbour for 10 years. How well did you know him?
All right. So we are in number 11 and he lives in number 9.
Right.
So we renovate, we buy our house, and our house is pigeons and mice.
Right.
Okay. That's it. It was derelict.
Right.
So we rebuild our house. We move in 2005. Okay. Jeffrey Epstein is arrested in like 08, I think, or something like that.
Right.
So knock on the door. His assistant on like a Saturday says, Mr. Epstein, your neighbor would like to invite you over for coffee. So my wife and I go next door. You know, we walk the 7 steps,
yes,
right, to the next house for coffee. We share a wall.
Right.
So it's in New York City. So he invites us in. We have coffee in this, and he says, do you want a tour? We said, great.
Interesting.
He's got a really big house.
Every room you went into?
He's got, well, I'll tell you. So his house is like super big, really wide. And so he gives me a tour in the living room, big living room. And then across from it is double doors. I assume it's the dining room.
Yeah.
And he opens the doors and there's a massage table in the middle of the room.
Ooh.
And candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me.
Ooh.
And he says, and the right kind of massage.
Ooh.
Now my wife is standing here. So she looks at me and I look at her and we say, I'm sorry. We have to go. And we left. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Really? So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or for even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Oh.
And so I look back at it as a gift.
Yes.
He gave me a gift.
Yes.
Of avoid.
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
so
that's my story. A one and absolutely done.
Right. So, I mean, that's an incredible story that you could pick up that he was a pervert.
It's gross. The guy's gross. Right with my wife. He's gross. The guy's gross. This was not, the deep nuance of Howard Lutnick. This guy's gross.
Right. So how come Bill Gates and all these other people could hang around him and not see what you saw? Or did they see it and ignore it? Or
no, they participated.
Right.
That's what his MO was, get a massage. And what happened in that massage room, I assume was on video. This guy was the greatest blackmailer ever.
I'm going to leave it there. It's actually Pod Force 1, if you want to listen to that. Pod Force 1. He goes on to say that he believes everything was recorded. And he also goes on to say that after he was arrested, there was likely a lot of exchanging video that went around. In other words, he used the video that he had to get himself a lighter sentence and to get himself better treatment in jail and so on and so forth. Pod Force 1, if you want to go back and listen to the rest of that interview, very, very interesting stuff. While I'm playing audio from other podcasts, I'll congratulate a former colleague of mine. We used to work together at Chorus Entertainment. He then went on to work at the CBC, albeit not for very long. And now Travis Danraj is still in a dispute with the CBC over his employment. He has launched his own podcast, and he interviewed Pierre Poilievre, leader of the opposition here in Canada. I'm only going to play a minute 20 seconds from Travis's podcast, but this is interesting stuff about the CBC. See, every now and again, actually it happens a lot on the podcast, I will try and point out to you the bias of the mainstream media. I'll try and point out to you that when you watch the mainstream media, you're getting their perspective or the opinion or the slant of the person presenting that information. They aren't necessarily giving you the news. They're telling you a story. And people think, Scott, that's crazy. The news is the news. They tell us the news. You got to trust the news. I don't, because I watch these things critically and I can see obvious omissions. I can see that they're showing one side of the story very favorably and another side of the story very negatively. I can also see that they have got little tricks that they do. For example, if they're covering a story that is divisive, like the speed enforcement cameras, they'll interview 3 people and somehow they'll find 2 of them that think these speed enforcement cameras are the greatest thing ever. And then they'll introduce another person who thinks, I don't like them, but I understand why we have them. And that creates the illusion when you've just watched this whole segment and heard feedback from regular people on the street that by and large people support these cameras, when in reality, that's simply not true. They're very, very good at deception. Well, if you still think, Scott, that is crazy, they would not do something like that, the news is unbiased and they're just trying to give us the facts. Just so you know, this is a guy, Travis, who used to work at the CBC, and he's going to tell you in this little clip here with Pierre Poilievre how things really work at the CBC.
Do you think that outlets lean one way or the other?
Yes, they do. And they all know that, and you know that.
I mean, I do know that. But I mean,
you worked for CBC, am I wrong?
Well, I did. Apparently, I still do. I haven't read the paper to see if I'm still employed or not. But
probably won't be after this interview.
After this airs, probably not. But I mean, part of the reason we did the show is to push past kind of gatekeeping. I did live it at CBC. I was told to keep quiet, not rock the boat. I mean, I was not even able to request an interview with you.
Wow.
I wanted to have you on my show. I was not able to do that. But what's your take on the state of our public broadcaster right now?
I think, it's as you describe it. They have an ideological objective and they carry it out every day. And but you described it very clearly in your comments after you. So have you left, just so I'm not misstating the facts?
I think that they have a story on their website with my resignation letter. But apparently,
well, before you resigned, you described how CBC operated, and I think your assessment is accurate.
Hey, it's that's not necessarily the worst. It's not. In America, the news is very polarized. You get CNN, which is very left-leaning. You get Fox News, which is much more right-leaning. And as much as I would really like broadcasters and journalists to just give us the facts and let people make up their own mind, it doesn't seem like we're ever going to return to a place where that is possible. So if that's the case, then they at least need to declare their bias. A simple thing that a television station like the CBC could do is, if you're watching news, that's fine. If you're watching commentary, It should specify that you're watching commentary with a little screen update, a little blinky up there that says you're watching commentary, not news. Because unfortunately, people will watch the CBC and they'll interview some so-called expert on whatever topic, and you're led to believe that what that person is saying is fact, when in reality, it's just their opinion. I heard some crazy stuff this weekend. Some economists saying, well, it looks like Canada's going to be able to avoid a recession. The economy is picking up. Who is that person and who thinks things are getting better right now? That's absolutely crazy. But you know, there's people who are going to watch that and not just think, oh, wow, things are going great. They're going to tell other people, the news says the economy's getting better. That's how this misinformation and disinformation spreads, and it's not right. I'm not asking for everybody to play it right down the middle. I have a bias, and I declare that every day in my podcast, or almost every episode. I'm a conservative. When you listen to this podcast, as much as I try and be down the middle and try and present you all angles of the story, many news outlets don't do that, and they don't declare their bias. You just assume that since you're watching CTV, it must just be factual news, when in reality, it may not be. It may be an opinion. It may be a commentary. And I really think that they need to go out of their way to specify when you're not watching news. I'm coming up on time here, so one more thing I want to play. I'm going to take you out to British Columbia to a story that I said I would stay on top of, and I will. Katie from the BC ostrich farm has confirmed the death of one of the birds. Listen to this.
So we do have some really sad news. We know what happened yesterday. It was a very emotional day for our family. Spirit has passed away. And we knew that. We knew that last night. But it went from sadness, and I think now today is a lot of anger, but it's frustration, I think, more than anything. The only way we found out she was not being cared for, we were actually getting results, was when we were holding up signs and making the public aware of what we were asking for, putting them on notice, that everybody knew what we were expecting of them to give her electrolytes. And we had some, because of you, all again, here, holding them accountable, which they've never been held accountable before. We actually have footage that those electrolytes that they were going in there, the police liaisons were taking it to them, doing their job, and those electrolytes they weren't even near the bird, and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency walked behind a bush and dumped out our electrolytes. So in Spirit's name today, I would like to call out the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and there is a new name for them today, and that is the Canadian Animal Cruelty Organization. Right, until they fix this and they come forward, you know, this is a cowardly act, and this is something that easily could have been solved, and it could have been just one of our family going in, treating her and walking out. We didn't need a phone, we didn't need anything. We just needed to have hands on her, loving her, and treating her like she should have been, not being lied to. So
it's sad. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, I don't know if they did anything wrong or if they were told, do not try and help that ostrich or hen or whatever it was called. They said hen. I thought it was an ostrich, but I don't know. I might be using the wrong word. Listen, at the end of the day, the people who run that sanctuary knew that she was sick. They knew she needed an electrolyte treatment. The police even agreed to take the electrolyte treatment into where the CFIA is guarding those hens, waiting for the call order to come down. And it sounds like the CFIA, not only did they not administer the medication that ostrich needed, they actually dumped it. You know, it may still happen that the Supreme Court lifts their stay and the Canadian Food Inspection Agency calls this entire flock of ostriches. It may come to that. God, I hope it doesn't, but it may. But until then, I think that they've got an obligation to do whatever is necessary to protect those birds. And if there was a treatment available that could have, at the absolute least, offered more comfort in the bird's final hours, I don't understand why they would withhold that electrolyte treatment. It makes no sense to me whatsoever, but it seems unnecessarily cruel. That's it for me today, friends. I got to go. Like I said, today was just a primer. This week is going to be filled with different things, and I'm going to try and bring you some great coverage right here on Scott Fox After 9. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, tell a friend, and check back in daily. I will leave you now with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now, and see you in less than 24 hours.